Hello everyone, my name is Nick Infernus, and welcome back to another ranking video. My review for The Green Mile is taking a little bit because I really want to do that movie justice. That probably gives you an idea of what I think of it. So in the meantime, let's talk about how only only just over 2 months after finishing Wave 5 of Transformers Legacy, I've already finished Waves. And I gotta say, I wasn't expecting this wave to do better than Wave 5 because that wave was awesome with only two figures that weren't great. And also my response to this wave when it was first revealed was kind of lukewarm, but then it actually ended up surprising me, and turns out it's actually my second favorite wave of Legacy. Like, not gonna lie, there aren't as many great figures here as there were in Wave 5, but the majority of them are still figures that I do love. That being said, there are just too many repacks in this wave. Like a good 36%, yes, I did the math, of this wave are figures that they either repacked from the War for Cybertron trilogy or from Legacy's first year. Now, that being said, most of the figures they repacked were, great figures, with one exception that we'll get to. But I do kind of wish that there were more original figures in this wave. Doesn't stop the wave from being great, though. So, with that being said, let's get into the ranking. Starting out with a figure that I predicted would be my least favorite, Deluxe Class Axle Grease. Now, the main reason why I thought this would be my least favorite figure of the wave is because this is a retool of Scrap Hook from Wave 4, which, if you'll remember, I had a lot of issues with, mainly because of his elbows. The elbows themselves would always pop off because the tension is mainly because the plastic used is a bit more pliable, and the bicep swivel was really tight, causing them to always pop out. Well, safe to say, this figure has that exact same issue, and as a little bit of a side story, while I was on my vacation, I actually went to a Target and found the Buzzworthy Bumblebee Rid 2001 tow line, and that figure had the exact same issue because it's a retool of Scraphook, so I ended up returning it because otherwise I would have no place in my collection whatsoever. So at this point, I'm just convinced that this mold is doomed to mediocrity, which really sucks because it has potential. It's just that it's ruining two of its most important aspects with a consistent QC issue. And honestly, I was actually hoping I'd like this more than Scraphook. I do think the muscle car looks great, at least in these pictures, and it's actually not that hard to tell that they're different vehicles from the robot mode. Plus, the robot mode always had some great design choices, like the front bumper becoming the feet with the giant heels. And the color breakup on this is also great. I certainly wish it wasn't this and was more traditional Junkion colors just with the Decepticon logo, but I still think it looks awesome. But unfortunately, even the car mode has to suffer with this giant blue growth sticking out the roof. So unfortunately, this ended up being slightly worse than Scraphook. Like, again, I wanted to love this mold when it first came out, but it just ended up leaving me disappointed because it's hard to pose the arms because the elbows always pop out. It's hard to transform because the elbows always pop out, and even then, the arms aren't even pegged in all that well, so they always come out, which, at least on like the elbows, they're supposed to do that, but it's still frustrating. And the vehicle mode is sabotaging itself with this giant tumor. I was really hoping that I wouldn't have to put this at the bottom, but alas, that's the reality we live in. I did forget to mention this is number 11. So at number 10, we have Voyager class Dirge, the lesser of the four repacks in this wave. This is a retool of the Earthrise Starscream, which is a figure I do like, but it's not really doing anything special. And this is at least a repack that I do understand because this is repacking the Dirge from the Amazon exclusive Dirge and Ramjet 2-pack. And that pack was pretty hard to find when it came out, mainly because aftermarket prices went up almost immediately. So I do get why they repacked it. Doesn't mean it's a great figure. I'd say the biggest issue with this is just the posability in general just being kind of weak. The upper body's fine, but the lower body is very problematic. First of all, it has no waist. I don't know why you couldn't have made that possible. But the hips are some of the most restrictive hips I've ever seen. The knees are a pain to deal with because they constantly want to untab from the shin doors, and even then there's not a lot of range in them. Feet are okay at least. I do like the transformation at least. It's a fun jet former conversion that still unnerves me a little bit because of the way the chest untabs. And the jet mode is nice, but I really don't like the fact that the shin doors can't close all the way because of the retooling. The fact that they have to lip over the skirt now instead of the skirt lipping over them, and they can't close all the way. I also just think this would have been better if the wings were one solid piece instead of two solid pieces on each side, of course. But yeah, just the way they're floating off the leg like that, it just looks clunky. In general, it's a fine figure, but there are certainly better versions of it out there, mainly the main Seekers. Also, I really am not a fan of the fact that the nose cone's hanging off the back, but the head's supposed to be the nose cone. I get that that couldn't really have been retooled, but that's still annoying. So at number 9, we have our next Dinobot, Core Class Scar. And I will say, this is a good figure. It's not the worst Dinobot, but there's certainly better. Trust me, we'll get to better later. Of course, this has the same issues as Slag, Sludge, and Grimlock, where it has no elbows, but it does at least have some pretty decent posability besides that, with, with Ford's Butterfly, a waist swivel, and some pretty deep knees. Transformation is very simple, but also a tad bit clashy, just getting the feet over the arms. But I do really like the Ankylosaurus mode, and Ankylosauruses are awesome in general. Also, the fact they made the tail the gun, and this has easily the best limb mode for Volcanicus. The giant bulky arm. I will say when I first got it, the legs were really annoying with how the knees would just spring back whenever you tried to move them forward. Fixing that was pretty simple. I just popped the shins out and then popped them back in, and they don't really do that anymore. This is overall a good figure, but like I said, there's definitely better. So, remembering where we are, at number 8, we have Voyager class Nemesis Leo Prime. I may love this wave, but I gotta admit, the Voyagers definitely weren't its strongest point this time. Unlike, the last 5 waves. So this is a Nemesis repaint of Leo Prime, who was a really good figure that just had a bit of a clashy transformation. Well, not a clashy transformation, just one that didn't like to hold together all that well, and a lion mode that was kind of a brick and really derpy looking. This at least fixes that issue by actually painting the eyes, which I cannot stress enough how much that helps. And from different angles, you can get some really interesting expressions. Like, if you're looking at from above, it looks angry, but from any other angle, it looks so sweet and innocent. It looks like just a cat you just want to pet. And I do also love the teal they painted onto his claws and also his waist. And they gave him an actual gun, which really helps because I wasn't really a huge fan of the weapon gimmick that the original Leo Prime had. So I'm definitely glad this comes with a gun. This is just a better version of that Wave 4 figure. So, certainly one I'd recommend picking up even if you weren't really a fan of that figure, which I get. So at number 7, we have Deluxe Class Devcon. Can I just say how much better this looks in person? The images, not really this one, but the ones they showed off in the live stream made the chest look really puffy and the lower torso look really short and stumpy. But in person, this has really natural proportions. This is a retool of the Studio Series 86 Blur, which, yeah, you'd be able to tell by looking at it. But the transformation, while a lot simpler, is much better. And I do find myself really liking the alt mode. If we're comparing this to the Titan's Return mold, which I don't have Titan's Return Blur, but I do have the Brainstorm retool of that figure, this is still not as good as that. I love that figure, and I think it has the most fun transformation out of all of them, just especially with the way that it all comes together in alt mode. So, of the 3, I definitely recommend that one. But this is still a really awesome retool of a previously pretty kind of just okay figure. Plus, the hand feel is great. This has some of the best plastic in the line. At number 6, we have Leader Class Blitzwing, a figure where I have absolutely no idea why you'd repack him instead of one of the harder to come by figures from Siege, because this is probably the second most available leader from Legacy's first year, only being outdone by the Kingdom Galvatron repack. Excuse me for a minute, I need to get a drink of water. Thanks. That doesn't hamper my opinion on this figure. I still love it. I just don't understand the decision. If you saw last year's video, you know how I feel about this. Awesome robot mode, great tank mode, and a jet mode that leaves me wanting a little bit more. But again, triple changer, one of the modes is going to get compromised, and of course it's always the jet mode. Again, I still question why they didn't repack Siege Astro Train, because that figure is really hard to track down, and Galaxy Shuttle was not helping. But if you somehow missed this, which let's be clear here, you didn't, then this is a good second chance to pick it up. At number 5, we have another repack, Core Class Starscream. This being a repack of the Kingdom figure, which was then repainted into both Thundercracker and Skywarp for this line. And I'm sure if you saw my Wave 5 ranking, you know how I feel about this. There's not really anything that this does wrong outside of having a little bit of kibble in jet mode, but this is a $10 core class, so that's understandable. I do find myself liking this the most out of the 3 figures, mainly just because I think it has the best colors, just with the red, white, blue, and the yellow torso in the middle. This also has the best QC out of all of them without any really loose joints. At least when I first got it, it has loosened up a little bit, but at least when I first got it, it had the tightest joints. Still a fun transformation that does some interesting things, and in general, I still think it's one of the best core class molds we've gotten in recent years. Since it was first announced 2 years ago. At number 4, remember how I mentioned that Scar was good, but they could be better? Meet Better. I did not mean to switch sides that quickly, but yeah, Meet Better. Core class swoop. This is my new favorite core class. I'm not kidding. This is my new favorite core class figure, beating out both Bombburst and Soundwave, and technically Sound Blaster, but that's a repaint, so it doesn't really count. That upcoming Snarl looks pretty promising, but right now, this is hitting all the right notes for me. First of all, the robot mode looks great. This thing actually has elbows. Why does this have elbows when the other 4 aren't allowed to? And then Snarl is also going to have elbows, which is just going to be insult to injury. This is probably also the best posing core class figure ever, with the deepest knees they've ever had and the best range at the head that any of them has ever had. The transformation is very simple, but kind of fun as well, and it's very satisfying just pressing the legs into the back. And the pterodactyl mode is pretty good. It looks fine until you get to the legs, but of course it's a core class, so they have to compromise somewhere. I say, seeing as how Snarl looks perfect, that's the reason why I say it looks promising and potentially why it could be my new favorite core class after this, because it looks basically perfect in both modes. But for now, this is still a fantastic core swoop. At number 3, we have Leader Class Armada Megatron. Man, this thing only got better for me once I got it in hand. This is one of the most fun figures that I've handled in the entirety of Legacy. This is a figure that I will pick up and mess with just because it's a fun figure. Getting the big issue with robot mode out of the way, those treads. Not necessarily the fact that they're doing the whole Laser Prime and Blitzwing thing where they're static and you can only move the arms underneath them, but the arms are actually mounted in the shoulder pauldrons and they constantly move, well, at an angle down. So it does have that issue, but it's actually pretty deal withable. You can just hold the pauldrons in place and move the arms. And this has probably one of the most fun transformations in all of Legacy, and easily my favorite tank mode in my entire collection. But even the tank mode has kind of a big issue. I really don't like the fact that there are notches where it just stops, whether it be a 90-degree angle to the left, I think that's left, or just doing some math, a 135-degree angle to the right. I don't know why I can't do the full 360, but you can still get a decent amount of range out of the tank turret, and it has depress, which Blitzwing didn't even have. Well, downwards depress. It has all the upwards depress you could want. So yeah, definitely my favorite tank mode, and easily my favorite Armada figure that they've done for Legacy. Runner-up at number 2 goes to Deluxe Class Tarantulas, the one repack in this wave that actually had me a little bit worried not because I dislike Tarantulas at all. I absolutely love this thing. It's one of the best figures to come out of Legacy's first year. But I was just worried that the best figure of this wave would be a figure from like 4 waves ago. And that had me a little bit concerned because that would have been really anticlimactic. But At the same time, I still love this figure and probably wouldn't have been too mad anyways. It has a just some awesome modes, great posability, especially in the lower legs, pretty fun transformation, and easily one of the best beast modes in all of Legacy, really out of all the Beast Wars Survival figures. Not to mention, that robot mode, spot on. Also, I did give his saw weapon to Knockout, so now he's got a surgical saw. But that being said, even in the wave where he's repacked, he's playing second fiddle to our number one deluxe class Beachcomber. When this first got revealed, I predicted that it was going to be one of my favorites of Legacy and definitely my favorite of this wave. Yeah, I ended up being right because this thing is near perfection. Now, of course, it's not completely perfect. It certainly lacks a bit in the posability, but other than that, the posability is still really good, getting pretty average outside of, below average shoulders and above average elbows. There's still a lot of fun to be had here. It's got great hand feel, where despite being small, it actually has a lot of weight to it. It's made of some really, really durable and robust plastic. I was thinking of what to say there. That just feels great to, well, feel. You can tell I do these without scripts. Transformation's pretty fun, does some things that I wasn't even expecting. Like, I was not expecting him to have a dominance establishing slider joint in the midsection. And both modes just look flawless. The robot mode, the only thing that's not great about it is the heels, but that's understandable. That has to go somewhere. But it's supremely clean, and the alt mode looks really awesome as well. And I also love the fact that with or without the gun grill thing, it looks great. And the rubber tires feel really nice as well. They feel like they're made of some really high quality PVC material. They don't feel like they're going to crack anytime soon. And unfortunately, my copy isn't really able to roll that well because one of the wheels is stuck. But I've seen videos where it rolls great, so I at least know they exist. This is easily one of the best mini bots they've put out recently. It's up there with Bumblebee Movie Brawn and Origin Bumblebee. And while it didn't end up being my favorite figure of Legacy like I was hoping, it's definitely in my top 5 and gets a extremely high recommendation from me. Don't just look for it if you can, hunt it down. Anyways, guys, that's going to be my ranking of Wave 6 of Transformers Legacy. And actually, I completely forgot about this while I'm recording this. Let me just quickly open this back up. Let me just rant for a little bit. They're re-releasing Core Class Optimus Prime in the next wave. Why? Not only was this readily available in the original Alliance from Kingdom, but it was arguably more available in year 1 of Legacy when it was re-released in Wave 2. Why are you re-releasing it again? I swear, if this gets re-released again next year, I'm done. Not actually, but there's no reason to do this. This thing was a shelf warmer. Anyways, actual outro. If you enjoyed, you know what to do. I'm not going to bore you with all the generic stuff. I'll see you guys in my review of the Green Mile. Take care, and Godspeed.